You're listening to Best Forevers, a podcast for kindred spirits, a podcast that encourages you to love more on your friends and to further consider the issues that plague friendships. I'm Elisa Lucas, and it's been a minute, huh? Ooh, friends, it's been a time with the stress all around us. And honestly, I lost some of my creativity along the way, but I'm really glad to be back, and I sure hope you and yours are doing well. As a way to adjust to this continued pandemic and a new semester starting, I'm going to move the pod to every other week. And then when I'm feeling good, maybe feeling better, I'll move it back to weekly. But I just wanted to say I appreciate your continued support. And if you're listening right now, your continued interest in listening to Best Forevers. The last time you heard me, I was talking about unfriending with my friend Nate Wu. And that is the idea of letting people know on your Facebook page, hey, if you support Donald Trump or if you support Biden, just delete me. We're not going to be friends anymore. And we also talked about the idea, what happens when you want to unfriend somebody on Facebook and realize there's a lot of complications because of it. So it seems like we need to go a little bit deeper into friendships right now, because what the heck is happening to friendships, right? You see more of the unfriending. I know that people don't see eye to eye on politics and what's going on in the world around us as it relates to social injustices, the election, and so much more. But there's something that I want to take some time to talk about and think about, and that the last year, we're almost at a year of being in this pandemic, and it's been tough, and we've been social distancing, we've had stay-at-home orders, we've had pauses on opening up, we've been opened up, the numbers rise, all these things are happening. No matter what's going on and the things that we don't agree on with our friends, it seems like there's a COVID divide. And that COVID divide might be putting more of a magnifying glass on our friendships. So here's what I mean. The COVID divide is that you start to realize that your friends or a friend, someone that meant a lot to you, maybe they still do, but you realize that you're not on the same page as it comes to the pandemic and all of the CDC guidelines, right? Masking up, how many people are together, did you celebrate holidays, did you fly, did you stay home by yourself, all these things that how we're coping with COVID-19. And the COVID divide, in my mind, is when friends aren't on the same page. So you have maybe perhaps a friend who doesn't believe in wearing masks or believes that the pandemic is a hoax or a way for the government to control us. Then you might have a friend who's like, oh, I believe COVID-19 is happening. I believe that I need to wear masks, but that I'm okay, right? Like, oh, I just hung out with this person before going over to my mom, so I'm fine. Like, oh, all I did was a birthday party with just 5 people instead of having a birthday party at all. And then the other place where you find people, and maybe this is yourself or one of your friends, is saying like, I am hunkered down. I am masking up, maybe even double masking when going out, that they have pretty much been home since March 2020. That if they do go out, it's something brief, it's a pickup. I'm immunocompromised, so I'm probably in this third group. I haven't seen a lot of people. I was by myself on the holidays. I did a lot of Zoom sort of things. And maybe there's more than 3 groups and you find yourself fitting in some other group, or maybe that is one of you. But what you find is that maybe your best friends, like a whole group of friends, you don't agree with them. So what do you do as a friend when you see someone posting having parties and flying and going to Christmas parties, and you see it on Instagram and you're like, we're almost at a year and we are still doing things that might make this pandemic spread. So you're like, is what I'm doing, is staying home, is masking up, even making a difference if all these people are going out? But there's a difference between other people perhaps going out. Maybe you're like, what is everyone doing? But when you see your best friend you see someone that you're close to, and it could even be beyond friendships. It could be a parent, it could be your romantic partner who you live with. There's all these sort of divides that might be happening on how to best deal with the pandemic. And it's become, I believe, a friendship challenge, right? How do you go about continuing your friendship when you don't agree on the best way in which to protect yourselves? And I think this brings us back to one of the things that we've talked about a number of times on this podcast, and that is what we look for in friends, right? How to be a good friend, what we want from our friends. And it comes down to those qualities that we seek out, that we love in our friends. And, let's run down the list, right? We've done this before, but, I've been gone a while, so maybe we all need, including myself, need a reminder. But one of the most important qualities that we might look for in a friend is similarity. And maybe you don't walk down the street or, surf social media and go, I need to have a friend that's just like me. But when you start talking to people and you can find that common ground, you can connect with each other, you start to see how you are similar, and that becomes something that's familiar, right? We like that similarity. We've heard of birds of a feather flock together. That means there's something about you and your friend that gets along, that, there's a foundation which you can build the rest of your friendship on. Maybe you're from the same hometown. Maybe you went to the same elementary school. Maybe you're into the same things. You listen to the same podcast, right? You support the same sporting teams. Whatever it might be, there's something that connects you together. And so I would say maybe more so than, okay, let's just think about it this way, that we're more likely to have similarities with our friends than all differences. But I don't think that we necessarily shy away from differences. Like, we're like, hey, you know what? It's okay if you don't do this thing, right? It's okay if we don't agree on this. Sometimes friends will agree to disagree. They might have friendly debates over those topics, or they learn something new because their friend is doing something different. So most likely, we don't shy away from differences, but typically our friends, we're going to have more similarities, right? We might not be with someone who's just all differences, because if you don't feel like you can connect or relate to someone, then you might not continue that friendship. So similarity is really important. What are some of the other qualities that we look for in friends, that we love in our friends? Having a good time, enjoying our time together, having fun, it being pleasurable in some way. Maybe it's spending time together, whether social distance or not, pre-pandemic, during pandemic. Hopefully we're all, dreaming about post-pandemic. But, we like to have fun. And the cool thing about friendships, which makes it so much different than all the other relationships that exist, is that we get to choose our friends. We get to choose the people that make us laugh. We get to choose the people that we get to spend our time with, whether on Zoom or not, right? That's what's so great about friendship. So we enjoy that. And then maybe through similarity, we can enjoy things, and that we start to build this really important relationship. And so that might include other things like being accepted, your friend being helpful, them being a great listener, providing advice, giving care, checking in on you. There's so many things that we look for and enjoy in our friends. But what happens when your relationship seems to be going well? Like, there's never been an issue, or sometimes the issues might be we've annoy each other because we spent so much time. So you're like, maybe a stay-at-home order helps us to refocus, have some time for ourselves, and then come back together. Or maybe you have arguments over different things that are going on in your life. Like, maybe you are the friend that listens and gives advice, but then your friend never follows it, and you might have had maybe a conflict about it. I mean, friendships aren't perfect. We do have conflicts. But this divide I'm talking about is something that goes a whole lot deeper. So what happens when your relationships are great, your friendship is great, you are spending time together, you are, however that might be, you feel like you're being supported, you feel like all these things, and then the pandemic hits. And then we have a stay-at-home order, so we can't see each other. right? So then we came up with all these creative ways to connect with our friends at a distance, right? I had like a daily thing you could do on Instagram. Like, these are ways in which you can connect with your friends. I've had episodes about how you can do that. Like, here are some different ways you can connect. You can do things virtually together. During the summer, I was part of that group in the episode Wine Fairies, where we talk about just like popping up on someone's step and there's, drop off some wine for them. It was awesome, right? But then things start to open back up. The pandemic has been going on longer and longer. And now you start getting invitations for weddings. You get, or maybe you're the one inviting people. Baby showers, all the things that we want to do in life that makes life the good stuff, right? To celebrate big achievements and milestones and to have our friends by our side during those things. But what if you don't feel comfortable going to your friend's wedding? What if you live with your parents? What if you take care of your parents who are immunocompromised, and going to your friend's wedding might open you up to exposure that you can then bring back to your parents? What about if your job has you in person and then you have a friend who wants you to do a bachelorette party out of town? And you're like, I'm already exposing myself in the workplace. I don't want to add more to it and then bring it back to my school. Or in another grouping, you could be like, I'm just going to limit it. I'm just going to have a party. It's just going to be 5 to 10 people. And you invite people, and there's one or more friends who are like, I'm not coming. And it's your 30th birthday party, or it's an engagement party, and your best friend's not going to be there. What do you do? What does that say about your friendship? And even further, you could have people are like, come on vacation, or whatever the case is. There's so many things that are going on right now. And what it does is presents us with a lot of decisions about what's the best way to protect ourselves. So simply put, we all individually have a way in which we cope with this pandemic. Maybe it's staying home and limiting everything. So I tell my friends, like, I'm happy to talk with you on the phone, or we can do this on Zoom, or whatever the case is, but I don't feel comfortable coming into your home. Or, it might depend on who I might be around, right? And I haven't been around a lot of people, so I might be the best person to be around because I haven't had any exposure. But what if I am around someone and then they expose me after all these months of protecting myself, right? We're coming to a lot of decisions that it makes it difficult to be like, I can't do that, or I'm not going to do that, or why aren't you coming to this? And so it has put friends in a very sort of difficult position, right? How is it that my best friend that I've known for 30 years is not going to be at my wedding, or doesn't understand that I don't feel comfortable going to her wedding? Right? The CDC guidelines would say we need to social distance, we need to wear the mask, we probably should limit our travel and how many people we should be around. And so thinking about that, if someone doesn't believe in that or doesn't agree with that, how do you then talk to them? So this is, again, what I'm calling the COVID divide. And I think it is a challenge for friendships because you're finally, maybe for the first time, or for the first most serious time, have a disagreement. And it may be not just a disagreement, right? It's not just like, I don't like mushrooms, so don't put them on the pizza, right? And then the friend's like, no, I'm putting mushrooms on the pizza. You're like, what are you doing? That's rude, right? Like, that's something you can probably figure out and get over. But if you don't agree on the best way to protect your health so that someone else doesn't get sick, then you find yourself wondering, did I choose the right friend? There's something about learning that you and your friends don't agree on how to cope with the pandemic that can make you feel like your friend is personally betraying you, right? If we go back to those qualities, friends are people that we're similar with. So we might believe out the gate, off the jump, right away that our friends are going to believe the same things we do because we are similar kinds of people, right? This is why we're friends, that we believe similar things. Yeah, we have differences and disagreements, but the core of who we are and our values and our morals are similar. So how are we not similar on this? And this is nothing we've ever experienced before. Well, I mean, people have experienced the Spanish flu in 1918, but like most of us, we've never experienced such a divide. And at the same time, there's also a political divide, which I will talk about in a different episode. But we are at a crossroads. This is at a point where people might be losing friendships. And is it worth losing friendships over, right? So we do have to consider the impact of the divide on who we are, on what we want in life, who we're connected to. And basically, these are going to be maybe the thickest boundaries that we are creating for people, or expectations, because I would think that those are in the group who are not going to go to parties and, expose themselves or expose other people, that they're going to set a boundary and say, this is just not something I'm going to do, right? It's where I put my foot down. It's important for my health, my partner's health, my children's health, whatever the case is. This is the right thing to do. That we are in a society that is dealing with a global pandemic where the numbers get higher and higher each day. Each day we're breaking records of how many people have died from COVID-19, how many people are exposed. And as things open up, we might even see those numbers increase. We might just starting to see the increases from the holiday travel, New Year's Eve travel. We just keep seeing things going up. And so what's going to be the change? It might be some friends putting their foot down and saying, I'm not going to do that. On the other hand, people who might say, this is fine. We're all probably going to get it anyway. This is just something that we have to deal with, but I still want to live my life. That they might communicate very thick expectations. I expect my best friend to be at my wedding, and my wedding is happening in 2021. Now, perhaps we all hope that the vaccines will be in place and that we all will be vaccinated by that point, but that might not be the case, right? We're behind on vaccines at this point, what they said they were going to do with vaccines. So what do? Are you someone who's setting a boundary? Are you someone who's setting an expectation? Are you thinking about the expectations that your friends have for you and when asking them to be at a party? Are you thinking about violating someone's boundary? Violating their expectations, and what that might do to the friendship. This might be the point where it's going beyond, I'm disappointing my friend, or I'm really pressuring my friend, or whatever the case might be. But then it becomes, what are we going to do? People might be to the point where this is, I have no idea who you are. You are completely different than I ever imagined you would be. And this might be the deal breaker that I never thought would be a deal breaker. This is not something we ever had to consider. And so now we might be at a deal breaker. We're at a deal breaker where this might be it. Friendship's cut off. Maybe people might be able to be friends post-pandemic, whenever that might be. Or maybe this is just it. Because we expect our friends, and as I mentioned before, violating people's expectations and boundaries in the course of a global pandemic that is impacting everyone. COVID-19 doesn't necessarily discriminate. I mean, it does in the sense that we have systemic racism in health and all the institutions of our country and in other places in the world. But it's not going to be like, you know what, I'm going to skip you and get you, right? COVID-19 is you're going to get exposed. You could get it. It could be really dangerous. You could end up in the hospitals. Our hospitals are at capacity. Other people might end up being turned away. People might be taken off machines that help them breathe. There's all these sorts of things that we have to worry about. And so someone who's been staying home since March might be like, what is all this for? I can't even believe that this is what my friend would do. I can't even believe that this is happening. And this would be a reason to end a friendship. Now, you might be thinking, hey, you know what? Politically, there's a divide. There's different beliefs about religion, abortion, all sorts of things. This is just another difference, right? This is just another disagreement that we shouldn't lose friends because of politics. We shouldn't lose friends because of COVID. But although you might believe that, it might still be the case that you do leave friendships, or that someone might leave you as a friend, because it's dealing with life or death. It depends on whether or not someone might make it out of the hospital, someone might recover. And recovery right now, we don't know a lot about, right? Because we know there's the term long haulers who maybe got this in April and still, and probably for the rest of their life, are going to have problems with breathing or some other issue that is because of COVID. So we don't know what the recovery is. Would you want your friend to get COVID? Would you want to be the one that exposes them, and then they end up in the hospital? What if they're one of the people who don't make it? What if they get turned away from the hospital because of capacity? What if they do recover, but then they have problems breathing for the rest of their life, which might impact their ability to work or do the things that they love to do? So I feel like we're just really in a spot that's quite difficult for friendships. It's difficult for everything. I talk to my parents nearly every day, and the conversations often are like, nothing is easy anymore. Trying to get someone on the phone, trying to make a return at a store, trying to just run into the store. Like, there's nothing easy. Like, you can't just be sitting on your couch at home and being like, you know what, I want to go through Target. It's like, wait, what do I need at Target? Is it busy at Target? Can I do a Target pickup? There's all these things that you have to then consider. And, nothing is easy right now. So maybe family relationships are difficult, romantic relationships, working relationships, finding jobs, keeping work, thinking about our health, thinking about our bills, thinking about our democracy, thinking about all these things. There's a lot going on. And one of the ways that can get us through these dark times is our friends. But what if the friend becomes someone who becomes too much of a battle? Meaning you get left out. They've cut you out because you won't show up to anything. They won't change plans to include you with maybe a connection through Skype or FaceTime. Maybe they don't want to celebrate with you on your own. And so then you're just not included with your friend anymore because they think you're being silly for staying home and not going out, right? Or what about going like... There's just, friends, there's just so much going on. And, I've been reading about different people's experiences and people just cutting people completely off, people they've known their entire life, that they've, went to college with, someone stood up as a best man, and it's like, you know what, we don't have anything in common anymore. This is the difference that supersedes any other difference, and it's cut through friendships. So it makes me wonder, friends, are you having any difficulties? Are you having difficulty being able to communicate your own boundaries? Do you feel like it's difficult because if you say that you're not going to go to something, that people reply with like, well, I didn't need a lecture, or, I understand we have to be social distance, but it's my 40th birthday, or, I don't need a party pooper. I don't need someone who's believing in this hoax to like ruin my birthday. Are you expecting some sort of negative response? Or if you are having, celebrations and things like that, what are ways in which you're going about it? Like, can you think about how to do it so that your friend feels comfortable? And maybe there isn't any way for them to feel comfortable because they just don't want to be exposed to COVID and they don't want to expose other people. So it becomes very tricky. Now, I personally, like I said, I've been home since March. I let people know that I'm not going to participate in things, or like I can't do that. I have, ADA accommodation for work. So it seems really silly that if I can't wear a mask in the classroom, that I would be going anywhere and not wearing a mask or exposing myself. That's what I believe personally, right? We all have those personal beliefs, right? So how are we going about having these conversations? And one of the things might be, we always thought we would be the one that might be able to sway our friend or change their mind about something, or that we might be saying, well, if they cared about me, They wouldn't force me to make a decision where I have to go do something that's uncomfortable, or I don't have to expect that they're not going to show up. And that might be the only way they see their friends as being supportive, is showing up to the events they have. Well, you know what? 2020, 2021 right now, things are different. Things have changed. We can't go back to pre-pandemic. And so now we have to start thinking about how to have these conversations and what we're going to do. Does this end the friendship? Is this a friendship breakup? And, I have been planning to talk about breakups since I started this podcast. And I can tell you, I would have never thought that something would happen like COVID that could lead to friendship breakups. So friends, what I'd like to know from you is this. Are you having difficulties in your friendship? Doesn't matter, what sort of position you might be in. Do you think your friends are being unreasonable about inviting you to things, or being unfair about including you in things because you won't show up face to face? Do you think your friends are being unreasonable because they won't come to the things you've invited them to? Do you think that you can change your friend's mind about COVID? Do you think that if your friend is someone who stayed home and wearing a mask is going to change their mind for you? And do you think if you've been staying home since March, that your friend is now going to mask up and take COVID more seriously, right? We might have thought that we could, and we might not think that anymore. So I'd love to hear from you. What is your experience with friendship in the COVID divide? Do you think that COVID divide exists? Does it exist for you? And if it does, what are some of the difficulties that you're having? I would love if people might share their experiences or provide questions that I can answer and provide advice to people who might be listening. This is a real life issue. It is a current event issue, meaning it's happening right now. It's something that we haven't experienced before, and we might not know what to do about it. And so that's what I love about this podcast. We can talk about the things that we celebrate friendships and we love friendships, but we also want to talk about the difficulties we have so that we can help each other to have the best friendships that we can. And I'll say this. There are some people that would say that COVID is not a reason to lose friendships, as I was mentioning before. Like, you might be friends with people who have different political beliefs. But again, when it comes down to COVID, what might be different for people is that it feels like life or death. And it feels like a personal betrayal because you would think that your friend would care, no matter what point of view you have. And whether you're masking up and not doing anything, kind of masking up, kind of protecting yourself, or being like, I don't need to wear a mask, it's fine, whatever. That no matter what, that you are wondering what I can do for this friendship. And so let me know what you think. You can reach me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And I'm bestforeverspod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can also reach me through elisalucas.com. But I would love to be able to provide advice, because no matter which of those situations you're in, you might not know how to handle it. And no matter what, COVID might be a reason why people end friendships, and that's okay if they do. Because at some point, some people might have to draw a line. And if you think it's a personal betrayal, it's probably because you think that your friend should care about you more. And to consider these things, whatever way it might go, that they would care about you and would try to protect you, or that they would be a part of your celebrations. And the thing is, it might just be that deal breaker. And if you feel like the friendship has become toxic, it's certainly okay in which to end friendships if you don't feel comfortable. I would love to talk about this more, because it's something that we're all coping with now, but we're all coping with whatever. I mean, it probably just feels like we're just doing whatever we can to survive and thrive. And maybe some of that's just getting out of bed and washing your hair. And you know what? That's good too. But we just might not have the tools, right? We've just never dealt with this before. And so it's something that's been weighing on my mind for months, because you start to see it, and it's not anything that I'm experiencing personally. I feel very grateful that, I'm able to do a lot of things at a distance, or say, I'm not comfortable with that, or, I'm okay with that, or, those sorts of things. And I appreciate that my friends respect my boundaries. And I realize that that might not be the case for everybody. But I still feel strongly about friendships. Like, even though I've been away for a few months, I love friendship. I think friendship matters. It's important. It helps us through the good times, the dark times, and life would be so boring without our friends. But sometimes we just end up struggling and we need a little bit of help. And I want to figure out what that way might be, right? I feel like the Mandalorian. This is the way, right? This is the way you manage friendships during COVID. So again, let me know if you have questions, if you have experiences. And until next time, friends, consider whether or not masking up and social distancing is worth it to see your friends. Because without our friends, who would we be? Thanks for listening to Best Forevers. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and of course, share with a friend. Please be sure to follow Best Forevers on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Best Forevers Pod, and I'm at Dr. Lisa Lucas on Twitter. You can always find the podcast webpage for more information at bestforeverspod.com, and share your stories of friendship by emailing me at bestforeverspod@gmail.com. And if you'd like to support the movement to love on our friends more, check out the podcast on patreon.com/bestforeverspod. Now, friends, check out this recommended podcast that you must get in your ear holes immediately.
Did you ever go on vacation with your family and hope the dance instructor would fall in love with you?
No, but I did think a guy with a giant boombox playing Peter Gabriel outside my window in the middle of the night meant true and undying love.
Listen to our podcast, Happily Ever Aftermath, where we revisit these movies, and it turns out they weren't the best ideas.
What were we thinking?
You can find our podcast, Happily Ever Aftermath, on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or your favorite podcatcher.
You can also tweet at us at HEAMCAST, Heamcast.